Welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at the Air Maestro version 3.5 release. As you can see on our home screen at the bottom, we've got a notification saying that the site has been upgraded to 3.5. As always, we're going to be looking through the release notes item by item and showing you where to find it and how to take advantage of it. The first item we're going to look at is this alerts. And it says, upon logging into Air Maestro, you'll find additional information to ensure users read, acknowledge, and understand the alerts sent to them. So we find that at the bottom here, this big black bar to make that more prominent. You'll note that this continue button is grayed out until each of these categories or individual alerts has been acknowledged. And that's now available to click. The second part, which I've actually just filled out because we had a technical issue, these fields here, if you use the price leaf weight control, are no longer automatically populated. This ensures that these are actually filled out if you set them as mandatory. If they are mandatory, then your crew won't be able to progress past this. All right. The second part, we'll come back to the Air Maestro app a little bit later. Check forms have had a nice little overhaul in this release. They are now able to update company as well as aircraft recencies, and we have allowed the ability to copy recency checklists. So if you have a set of checklists that are similar, it's now much easier to generate those by just copying one and modifying it as necessary. So to find that, we'll go to Setup, Operations, down to the bottom to Recency Check Form Setup. There's a new column here, which says checklist type, and this will either be personnel, aircraft, or company. And the same thing is present here in recency checklist, checklist type, personnel, aircraft, or company. This button on the right-hand side here is new. It allows you to copy a checklist. So I can click on that, choose to give it a new name, or just let the system generate copy one. And if I go and create a new checklist template, there's a new radio button here that lets me choose which recency items I want to tie it to. So an example of this is that we've implemented already is one of our clients has a mandatory aircraft inspection daily, which is an alternate means of compliance for them. So what we've done is we've created a check form that is tied to a recency item that gets done every day. There's a warning sent out if it's not done. And the full history of those inspections is available underneath that recency item. So we can just select one of these, insert, and create a check form as normal. If you create, checklist. If you create a check form, we have a similar radio button. And you'll see that the available checklists depend on which type of check form is created. So if we create an aircraft recency checklist, that will show here. Whereas if I select personnel, only the personnel type checklists will show. Okay, document library. This is a very small change, but quite useful for those of you who work with it. When I upload a new document by clicking Add File, and I'll just select some rubbish on my desktop because my desktop is always full of rubbish. We now have the ability to specify the version number of this document on uploading instead of having to revise it afterwards. Exams, you can now choose to automatically reassign exams if they're failed. This can be found in the first page of the exam setup. So we're going to go Operations, Exams. I will edit this existing exam. And there's a new numeric selection field here where I can choose how many attempts a person gets and whether they should only resit questions that they failed. So if you have a policy of correcting to 100%, that would be the one that you need to tick. The courses module now includes exams as well. So to find that, we're going to go Setup. In the Operations column, we're going to scroll to the bottom to Training and Course Setup. You can see for our Engineer Induction one, we now have two headings, Check Forms and Exams. And you can just select from your list of exams in the system, and these are sorted by exam category. Okay, flight records, the scheduled task table can now be filtered and sorted. So we'll go to our flight records. It says this is viewed by the expandable scheduled tasks window. In case you're not aware of where that is, that's here. You need to click on the plus sign, and each of these columns now has filters available. Enhanced flight record filtering. Many operators require their crew to record flights that were done outside of the company in order to ensure accurate flight and duty monitoring. In 3.4 and before, there was no real way to find those easily. However, now we have two new filters here where you can type up other aircraft or other PIC and filter your flight records as required. There's also flight ID and leg ID, and we can add those using Add New Filter. Beg your pardon, here in columns. So we'll select Edit, and you can find them here and add them. Okay, global reporting. When creating a global report, the only available base field in step 2 report columns was the full base name and base ID. Now you can select the short base name as well. In case you're not aware of where that comes from, we'll click on Locations. And let's open up Amsterdam. And here's the short name. This is also the name that you see in the roster. So that's now available to be included. A report history log. Enable the ability to create a report which will generate a list of users who have run reports and when they ran them. Let's go and have a look at that. So I've built this one previously. I didn't want you to sit and watch me do it. Here's our report history log report. You will see that this is available in under the Air Maestro administration module here, and the report area is called report history log. We have a good selection of fields for the information that you want returned. And I'm going to check who's run them in the last month. This should also include any automatically generated reports. So here I've chosen to include when it was run, who ran it, what their personal ID was, which IP address they accessed it from, how they exported it, what filters were used, and how they exported it, either through browser or downloaded, in this case, as PDF. All right, new backend framework added for current reporting services, supporting embedded HTML. Work practices and fade scores are now available to be reported on via custom report. These are actually both applicable to custom reports. So it's not something that you'll see on your end, but it gives us better abilities to create custom reports as per your requirements. Extra columns available to view in the Leave module. So we're going to find that here under Operations and Leave. And we've got some new columns here for department and job title and base. You can also sort by those columns by clicking on them as you can elsewhere in the site. Previously, when users lodged leave, they were unable to cancel the request. In this case, we're going to go and look at my profile where I've applied for this particular point of leave. And I can click cancel there. This will also send out an email to the leave approver notifying them that leave is cancelled, so you can adjust the roster accordingly. Right, in the aircraft module, we have a new feature, which is airframe cycles. So previously we had the ability to track hours. We can now do cycles as well. To find that, we're going to click on Setup. And here under Aircraft Maintenance Setup, we have our 2 counters. The plan is to have more available in the future, so you can track engine cycles and engine hours as well. But that will be in the future release. It's not available just yet. You can choose to enable or disable cycles, but you cannot disable aircraft hours, like so. And using this custom fields, you choose which field in your flight records you want to update this. So if you don't have that, you can contact us. We'll set up a cycles counter. It's usually just tied to landings, and that can be tied to that. The reason that you might want to use this is that in the aircraft availability section, let's have a look at this aircraft. You can now specify whether maintenance events are due at a certain airframe hours or airframe cycles, and you can set up alerts for both. And that ties into the scheduling module to give you a maintenance forecast of when a particular maintenance event is going to become due. All right, operational risk assessments. We have additional custom fields. The new ones are numeric fields, text fields, date, time, and date and time. You can find them here under Setup, Operational Risk Assessment Setup. Let's go and have a look at this charter one. And if I add a new checklist item under Control Type, these ones are new: numeric, date, text, date, time, date and time. Create standalone actions. So this is present in the action register. This is controlled by an access level. So if you don't see this, just check your access levels or get your system administrator to do that for you. And there's a new button at the top here to create an action that is not tied to a parent. So what do I mean by that? Previously, all actions are tied to an audit or to an occurrence report, a risk, a hazard, a task. We've just created a new type of action called standalone. And that is not tied to a parent. It's just sitting by itself. You don't need to open a new report, task, audit, whatever to create it. But the interface is still the same. The only difference is standalone action type, where if you select general, you get the basics. If you click safety, then you get a risk level as well, depending on whether those are enabled in your safety module. And you'll see here under the parent column, standalone action. Otherwise, they're exactly the same as other actions. We have implemented the ability to use multiple risk matrices in a single site. So in preparation for this webinar, I tried my best to create the ARMS risk matrix. We can find that here under site setup, safety risk matrix, and you have a new set of tabs where you can create new risk matrices. If I click add, you'll get the name, the x-axis label, the y-axis label, and once you create those, you'll be able to generate those axes, generate the risk levels, and create a table. At this time, the only place that you can select the new risk matrix is in different report types. So if we come here to our safety options page and go and look at a specific report, like a flight occurrence report, you can choose which risk matrix you want to use. We've got a new column in the safety report register. So to find that, we'll go safety, safety reports. We can select pick columns on the right-hand side. And the new one is here, sent to authorities. And this just gives you a true or false. We've added the ability to exclude certain safety reports from reporting methods, mainly from global reports. So if you have a sensitive occurrence report that you don't want anyone to be able to draw, we'll go to safety options, report types. We'll edit a report type, and you can choose to exclude them from status and outcomes, which was there previously. And now you can choose to exclude from global reports as well. Exporting safety reports. Previously, you could print them off. We've added a new feature which allows you to export it as an XML. So let's go and have a look at this. We had print over here, which generates actually quite a nice printable view of all of the information, actions, forum posts, whatever. But the new one here is export to Word using an auto-generated template or a custom created one. If you want a custom template, you can let us know and we'll create that for you. And if you have a certain template that you need to send off reports in, that's the way we go about doing it now. Price sleep weight control, we saw that when we started. Fields are no longer auto-populated to ensure that it's correctly filled out. One of the last changes we're going to is a new control type in the work practices. So we're going to go setup, work practice setup. I've implemented this in our part 135 work practice over here. And we have our increased flight duty period. So this control type is just called increased duty. It will pick up whether you have a duty or flight duty table. And you can say the single duty period length determined by the lookup table here, which we'll look at in a second, may be increased by up to 3 hours. And there are several conditions under which this apply. So take careful note of those to make sure it's actually doing what you want. The lookup table it's referring to is this one here, where we have our start time, number of sectors flown, and allowable FDP. This row at the bottom is actually saying allow personnel to extend the shift at their discretion up to 12 hours in total. It's not an extension of 2 or 3 or 4 hours. Right, there have been some improvements to single sign-on. I'm just managing that sign-in process better. But the last things that we're actually going to look at are in the Air Maestro progressive web app. So this has seen an overhaul. It's definitely not the last one. We're making changes to the features and functionality and look of this app all the time. And the main features that we've got this time are the inclusion of check forms and forms. You will need to log into this every 17.5 hours at this time to make sure that you have the most recent version of all of these forms on your device. We've got 3 tabs: favorites, recent, and all. A menu on the left where I can see my drafts. my in progress, and my submitted items from this device. Under all, we can see we've got a selection of safety reports, of forms, and of check forms. So I can click on PPC, select the examiner, let's make it Rob over there, duration, pilot, just put myself, route flown, primary aircraft, etc., etc. And then you'll see that you have our checklist over here, as per the one on the site. You'll note that many of these are marked as optional. We don't yet have the ability to mark these as mandatory fields. However, this app has been created such that it is ready for that to happen. And that is planned in a future release. Finally, we've got our comments. You can upload a file. If you're on a mobile device, just take a picture and attach it. And then it's queued for submission. When you are online, it will be submitted and go through to the site. So that's check form 76 on our site. And it's gone there to be to have sign-offs requested. At this time, it's not possible to sign off the forms in the app. However, that is also something we're investigating. It's just a bit of a tricky one security-wise. All right, so we go to My Profile, check forms. There's check form 76. And as the examiner, I can request sign-offs here. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise them now. Otherwise, you can send an email to help@cairnaviation.com and we'll be glad to get in touch with you. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will be uploading a recording of this webinar to our YouTube channel. You can find it there. If you subscribe to our channel, you'll be notified of any new videos that are uploaded immediately. Right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.